Joshua McCutchen, what is going on, my friend?
Yes, sir. Been a long time. Been a long
It
time.
has been a long time, and it's been a very long time coming, specifically for this podcast, guys. You guys who are listening or watching, the people that have been on, they already know we've been talking about this. I've been trying to get this thing going so many times, and he was one of the first people that I wanted here on this platform. He means a lot to me. Really good friend for so many years. You guys, for me, my former worship and youth pastor, guys, back in the day. That's how old that we were both getting. The moment I said that, I just like got chills down my spine, and I feel like I'm 50,000 years old. Joshua McCutchen, sir.
Man,
So thankful to have you.
it's so good to be on here. And man, it's so cool because I was talking to some of the staff actually earlier today, and they're like, "What's going on?" And just talking about what we're doing here, and just relationship, man.
Yeah.
It's just so cool to think back to the Taylor Morgan that I knew at age 15
Oh,
and going all the way to fine arts and dude taking second
fine
the
arts.
entire state for worship team, bro. But just
Wow.
knowing from the get-go that really that God had placed his hand on your life. I mean, watching that at a young age and just being able to just be a part of it. And then what's really cool is just to see the relationships that have happened out of the early days for me. I mean, goodness,
Yeah.
that was 20 plus years ago, man. It's crazy.
Is that not wild, like to say out of your mouth? 20 plus, like 20 years ago. It was no, that was like
Dude, I ran
2000.
across a picture the other day.
Oh, man.
It was a picture of you and Silas with a cake. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, I have. My dad has that picture.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm an Okie from Muskogee. That's where we were at. My dad, I think, has that exact picture. Was it the one in the youth room?
Yep, in the youth room.
And Silas is kind of going like that. Hey, shout out to Silas. Yeah, kind of going like that or what? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Just incredible memories, man. I
Yeah.
mean, even from the early days, just amazing.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Alrighty, Josh. So you have been now. I think we talked about this. So worship for 23 years. Is that also the entire span of your ministry up to date right now, or is there more than that?
No, so college for me started, and boy, I'm going to date myself. I'll just tell you up front. I'm
Hey, go. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
45 years old, dude, which is just crazy. So I graduated high school in 97, went to Bible school in 97 to 2001 at Ozark Bible Institute in Neosho, Missouri. And so leaving Bible college in 2001, not really knowing kind of the direction. I knew that God had placed a call on my life and music was the avenue. But it was interesting because I came from it was a very Bible based college. And music was not an avenue really that I could go from, or go to. I knew that God had placed this in my life, but churches that I was associated with, they didn't have, and I knew that this was a calling on my life from the time I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so not knowing where to go from there. And so, which led me to Norman, Oklahoma at age 18, basically, going into my 20s. And so I ended up in Norman at a church on the east side of town called Heartland Harvest Church. And
Mm-hmm.
I started as basically an associate of music there for $100 a week, bro. $100 a week. And
Hey.
doing all the details of what you do church wise. But what I didn't really fully realize at that age was that God was already starting something in my life and building all of these stepstones, which from there, 2001 to 2003, was where God did so much of shaping. And then I ended up in Muskogee right after 2003. So really from 2001 to current, I have been full-time ministry. So 23 plus years. Yep.
23 plus years, man. I forgot, yeah, that you were in Norman
Yep.
prior to all that. And so that's where you had come
Yep.
from and
That's where
to
I'd learned.
Muskogee.
I had done music my whole life. I mean, from the time, goodness, I was age 4 and 5, I was singing, doing all of those kind of things. So I've
Yeah.
been raised in the church, and that's such a blessing and testimony. But going into going into my first actual position, there was just so many things that I didn't know and still learning today. And ultimately, I landed in Muskogee and was there for 2 years. Obviously, all the connections. I was there full
Hmm.
time as the worship pastor. But as you remember, halfway through that, we lost the youth pastor there. And so that began about a year, a span of being a youth pastor, which I will say, and that's the only place I was able to be a youth pastor. But that year marked my life, I think, more than anything
Hmm.
that I can remember, because I realized from the get go, man, and this will come up a lot in this conversation today. I realized at that point that relationship was so important.
Yeah.
And, and I can go down a list of names, man, from being a youth pastor, and just all of these names that I see today, and having families and still living for Jesus, and all of these, just it's just amazing to see. And so that year really marked me, I mean, for the rest of my life. And if I would have ever felt that leading, I probably would have continued doing youth pastoring. But here's the problem. Let's be real. Churches that we associate with, they they want to pay a one-time salary for two jobs.
Talk about it.
God's honest truth.
Right.
What I
Right.
found myself running into was I was having to pick and choose what was going to take the bulk of my time. And let's be real. I mean, youth need a youth pastor.
Yeah.
And so relationship on the
Right.
youth pastor side, and so in that sense, the music side definitely took a hit because I was having to put all this time into it. That's why personally I feel go with one thing, because something's always going to take a hit
Hmm.
when you're doing multiple things.
That's interesting. So I don't know if, I mean, we've probably had so many conversations again, guys, 20 something years. And by the way, I graduated in '04. So when he said 20 years ago, it was my 20th year graduation. Did I go to it? Absolutely not.
RIP CBC.
Yes, yes, it is. Man, is no longer. Yeah. So I don't know if I ever knew that. So with obviously doing two roles, two separate ministry things, especially someone like you who is going to give 120,000%.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever knew that despite the Lord's leading, calling, like if checked would have been on all those boxes, you would have kept with youth ministry. What was it about that, or that specific time, that
On it,
you would have said I could maybe do this long term?
it was watching God shape young lives.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, was it hard? Definitely. The
Mm.
the the nights of where we would have all night
Oh man.
sleepovers in the youth room and playing football on
Right.
these across the ground. So there was so many sleepless nights, but I look at it today, and it's just like those moments were impactful. And not anything on the other side in the worship field is not. That's not what I'm saying. But I feel like you have the ability to affect young men and young women for an entire life.
Yes.
Because if you can dig down into where their hearts are and get there, and today, I mean this with all my heart, I pray for our youth pastors, because
Yeah.
they are seeing a total different side of kids than I think we've ever seen before.
Yes.
So what they're having to deal with, man, and I'm still blessed to be able to lead youth worship every Wednesday night. and
Oh, that's great.
and so
Yeah.
and so I still get to pour into students' lives on a different aspect every week. And but I watch what our youth pastor here goes through, and just the things that he deals with. And we have, on average 175 youth every single week. And I
Mm.
would say probably 75% of them are unchurched young people. And so you can imagine what he deals with on a given week.
Mhm.
But I think that that's probably why it moved me so much, is to watch how how moldable students are.
Yeah.
And because, you know today, it's the voices that are going into into students' ears, and it's those things that are affecting things in their lives for the long term. And so if you can get that good voice and that positive reinforcement from a young age, it can change lives.
Absolutely. I mean, Josh, it's no, it's not hidden that, I've always said this, man, and still look up to you in so many ways, and so glad the connection that God gave us, way back when. And it's just no matter where we've moved and gone, and some have moved more than others. This guy right here, we were laughing about it, texting about it. He was like,
Hey, I'm with you, man.
Josh is saying it's hard to keep up with the Morgans, and I'm like, I get it. Even like in state guys, we just move a lot, and hopefully that should be ending soon. We're looking for our own place and some land, by the way, within about the next year. So I am beyond stoked on that. We have 5 kids. For the love of God, do we need it?
Yes, sir.
Say amen, because we're loud, and we're loud and proud about it. We got a lot of kids. We got a lot of energy.
Yes,
But
sir.
I've always been so thankful, Josh, for people like you who God brought, God brings people into our lives. Somebody said for seasons and for reasons. And sometimes those seasons are short. Sometimes they last for a lifetime. What is it? And do you have people that in your head that you could look back in pivotal times in your life where you're saying, my God, literally, thank you for bringing this person, these people into my life at a time that I don't know if I would be the person I am today, or if I would be doing what I'm doing today without these people?
100%. And man, it goes back to when I was 12 years old, 13 years old,
Yeah.
because my first ever youth pastor, it was a man by the name of Randy Snow. And he actually is a pastor in the Dallas Fort Worth area. Phenomenal man, incredible ministry. But he was my first youth pastor, and he shaped me in a way that it changed my life for the long haul. In fact, I've seen him within the last year, and I try to make it a point to say every time I see him, hey, um, you played a pivotal role in changing my life. And I think that's important to let the people know that are a part of your life that have influenced you,
Yes.
let them know that. But then life happens. Let's be real.
Yes.
When when you get married, and for me personally, I've been through a lot of things within my life, and I've went through divorce in my life, and those things at that time of my life in 2010 was probably the most pivotal time that I've ever went through,
Mhm.
because coming out of it really as in full-time ministry, and didn't know the situation that was happening at the time, and all of a sudden end up in transition to a different church, and find out that my family is falling apart, and for a lot of different reasons. That could be a whole nother podcast. But
Yeah.
and just realizing I'm literally at the bottom of anything I've ever been through.
Mhm.
And so I end back up in Norman, Oklahoma, 10, and I'll never forget it. It was the week before Easter, and I find myself sitting on the back row of the church, broken, literally just weeping the entire service. And that went on for weeks and
Mhm.
months. And until the point to where, the pastor that I was going to church at there said, you know what, Josh, he had known me for a long time. In fact, it was the church that I grew up at and was back at in 2001 to 2003. And he said, Josh, he said,
Okay.
it's time for you to start doing what God's called you to do. And I'll never forget that. And I appreciate, and his name, I'll tell you, his name was Jeff Burns, and he played
Mhm.
a pivotal role in me getting back to what God had called me to. And I needed
Mhm.
somebody to tell me at that time, Josh, it's time to move forward. And so at that period of time, and that was April, shifting to October and November of 2010, somebody had called the church there and talked to my pastor there and said, hey, we are needing a worship pastor, and do you know of anybody? And obviously they knew my situation, talking about the pastor here in Oklahoma, and said, we do have somebody. He's been through a lot in the last year, but you are more than welcome to talk to him and see what happens. And so at this time, I received a phone call from Pastor Marion Dalton and Stephanie Dalton in
Mhm.
Lexington, Kentucky. And I will never forget it, because the phone call that I got was with those two, was with Mark Keene, and
Mhm.
I was with the entire staff there at Bethel Harvest Church in Lexington. And what's so funny is I don't remember, if because I remember I was on the golf course. I was on the golf course with my dad, and I get this phone call, And I say, Dad, I've got to take this. And so we're right in the middle of a golf round. And I remember going behind a bathroom on the golf course to take this phone call. And I sit down and we start having this conversation. By the end of the conversation, man, I'm weeping.
Mm.
Um, because it was like, God was doing something in my heart and preparing me for what the next season of my life was going to be. And I didn't know. I had known who Pastor Dalton and who Stephanie was, but I had never known them personally. Halloween weekend of 2010, they have me come out and they had me walk onto the stage of the church, and I played one song, and I'll never forget it. We walked back to pastor's office, and he offered me the position to be the
Mm.
worship pastor at Bethel Harvest Church on the spot. And I'll never forget it, man. It was this peace, a complete peace that God was in control of what was happening. And what was crazy, so that was again Halloween weekend. 14 days later, I had packed up all my stuff and I began being the worship pastor in
Oh,
Lexington, Kentucky. And here's what's crazy. You're talking about people shaping your lives.
yeah.
I will never forget the not only did they want to do life with me, but they took on all of the baggage, all of the things that I had been through. And that was one of the things that they spoke to from the get go. They said, Josh, we realize number one, there's no perfect people. We realize that everybody goes through things. And they said, we know you've come through a lot, but that's the type of person that we want on our staff. And I think a misconception that a lot of times that we have growing up is that we have to be perfect.
Yeah.
We have to be perfect in front of all of our church people, because if you're not perfect and you don't have this front on, then you're not going to people are going to perceive you the wrong way. And so this cookie cutter Christian type of person, and this was one of the first times that I ever heard somebody say, let God use your brokenness, change lives within this place. And so, I mean, even to this day, Pastor Dalton and Pastor Stephanie, we talk frequently, and he really played a role of a spiritual father. And this was one of the first times I'd ever heard the term spiritual father used, is because I needed somebody to pour into me. I think one of the things, as especially ministry wise, as you grow, is if you're real, you want somebody to be there when you need to talk to them. And so often, I think there's these barriers that we feel like we can't go to our lead pastors or the people that are is our authority and talk to them about real things, because we're afraid, let's be honest, we're afraid that they're going to fire us
Yes. Yes.
and that we won't have a job anymore. And this was the first place that I'd ever been at that I felt the complete freedom and peace to walk in that office
Hmm.
door and say, this is what's going on in my life right now. I just want to be open and honest with you. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. So in 2013, when I'm when out of the blue, I got a phone call to come back to Norman, Oklahoma to be the worship pastor back at my home church. I got this phone call and it came from nowhere. The time that we spent in Lexington, Kentucky was the most life-giving season at that point that I'd ever
Hmm.
been a part of. And so I get this phone call, and I had no idea that this was going to be a pivotal moment in my life. You see, going back to the divorce and things that had happened in my life, my prayer, again, I'm living in Lexington, Kentucky, and my kids are living in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas area. And
Okay. Okay.
I'm driving all the way there and all the way back to be a part of my kids' lives, my two oldest.
Mm.
And at that point in time, my prayer the entire time of this is, God, give me an opportunity to be a father to my kids and not just one that's there one time a month.
Yeah.
And so I get this phone call to come back to Norman, Oklahoma, which is two and a half hours from Dallas, Fort Worth. And I'm like, I have to visit this and I have to
Yeah.
look at the opportunity that's here. I go straight into my pastor's office along with
Mm.
Pastor Mark and say, guys, I just got this phone call out of the blue. I said, I have no idea what to do. And the answer that I got was, Josh, you would be stupid not to visit this and pray about this. And
I mean, guys, like, listen, like, that's not the normal response. Like, let's just be real. For those who have not been in ministry and you're hearing what Josh is saying, I've been in ministry, understand, like youth ministry, worship. Like, I've seen the things that happen behind the stage, behind the curtains, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows, you guys. There's a lot of sad things, just like anything. In anywhere in life, whether it's a secular job or anything that you're doing, right? We're all still human, even if we're pastors, if we're on stage, we're trying to be leaders in the spiritual Christian context. But for you to, what I kind of hear you saying is, so immediately when you got that call, you felt the freedom to be able to, like, that's rare,
That
to
was the
be
first.
able to, one, be able to even just talk about this with out them thinking, "Oh, you're searching," and guys, it's real. They just cut you immediately,
Yeah,
but you felt like you could have this conversation because there was a relationship and a trust that was being established where you could bring you could bring anything and you knew you were in a safe environment. What a response. I mean, honestly, that's not normal. That's not
it was.
normal.
No, it was completely life changing to be able to
Yeah.
have that conversation. And then, and again, these are people that did not just say things.
Yeah.
When they said things, they did things.
Mm.
And I've never shared this with anybody. There was a particular time in those 3 years where I didn't have the money to make the drive to go see my kids in Texas. And these guys out of their pocket, man, I will never forget, gave
Mm.
me a check to go buy a plane ticket
Wow.
to fly there to see my kids. And so when I say shaped me, molded me, I owe such a debt to Pastor Dalton and to Pastor Stephanie and Mark, all the relationships there. It was truly life changing. And to kind of what's crazy is to kind of put an ending on that little story is that so they told me to pray about it.
Mhm.
I fasted and prayed for an entire week. And I will never forget the moment. It was one of those moments that I almost felt like God was audibly speaking to me. And this is going to be ironic because I was pulling up to Chase Bank and I took my debit card because I was needing to take money out of the machine and I went to put my debit card into the machine and it was like God said, "Josh, it's time for you to go be a father to your kids." Just like that. And I started weeping, man. And what happened there was I pulled out of Chase Bank and I drove straight to the church and I let them know I just got my answer from the Lord. And at that moment, it wasn't a moment of, well, Josh is leaving. It
Yeah.
was love and wrap your arms around me and cheer
Oh,
you on and say, "Man, we know that God's got something for you." And that's the way they are, and that's the way they've always been, even to I mean, for the entirety of my life, man. And so I can't say enough of how thankful I am for them and the role they've played in my life for sure, man.
man, that's incredible. That's incredible. It's very, very positive and encouraging. I don't think there's enough in the Christian online YouTube podcast world space that you're hearing positive sides
Yeah.
of leadership. Um, I think now we tend to see a lot of the negative. I'm not. There's some bigger shows that are out there. It's just
Do you want to
everything
talk
negative
about the
about
other side? Because I could.
the leadership, right? And while it's good to have a little bit of this.
Yeah.
Now, I do think at the same time the yin and the yang, right? Both sides need to be talked about because it is not all sunshine and rainbows. And I think both of us, in our own different ways, have experienced the dark side, the harder side, the more difficult, the more human side of ministry or exiting or transitioning from ministry or from places. I know me for one, I one of my first ministry positions, it was very damaging. The culture was off, and that's putting it very lightly. I'm a huge guy about culture. No matter what job, your family life, whatever, everything you're doing, your actions, your words are shaping and shifting the culture around you. You're putting off an aura. There's an energy. There's a vibe. Whatever you want to call it. We could just put it this way: don't be a douche. That's one we can just throw out there. How about let's hey, let's be nice. So on that other side, speaking of transitions, because Josh, I feel that there's a lot of people out there that are in ministry positions right now, or even secular work positions. But let's speak to this ministry side. There's a lot of people out there that are in positions of leadership underneath authority that they feel cornered, they feel stuck, they don't feel like they can talk to anybody about what's going on because Josh, you know this, that would be dishonorable.
Yeah.
That's not honoring the authority. Have you went through things like this, Josh? What did you do? What would you say to somebody who's in a ministry position that you know they need to get out?
Yeah.
It's not healthy. Encourage them. Talk to us about that.
So, man, you couldn't nail it any better on the head with that, because there is so many times. And man, let me just take the outside world. If
Yeah.
people are watching,
Yeah.
we talk about the church world a lot, but I
Right.
realize people watching this may not be in the church world.
Right.
Man, I had a person come to me this week
Mm.
and wanting to have a very similar conversation of exactly what you're talking about, because it's a toxic environment. And the conversation that I had with this person was, this was their words verbatim. They said, "Josh, will you pray for me today? Because I am going into my boss's office to have a conversation with them to let
Hmm.
them know that I can't be in this situation anymore because of the environment and the toll it's taking on my mental health."
Mhm.
And they wanted to have this open conversation, and their prayers was, "Josh, pray for me because I don't know how this is going to turn out."
Yeah.
And when you're in that type of a situation, you don't know. And to have other people walking beside you during those moments, so critical. But I
Mhm.
will go back to a certain point in my life where I had to walk through this very same thing. And let me tell you, this is where claiming to walk by faith and actually walking
Mm.
by faith take a big,
It gets real.
yeah, it's where the rubber hits the road, man.
Mhm.
And so I'm in this position, and you got to realize am as a man, I feel like most men are this way. You provide for your home. You try to do everything that you can to to pay all the bills, all of these certain things that you go through.
Mhm.
And I was in a situation to where I knew I needed out. And to the point to where my wife had left the church. She was no longer going to the church. And however, my job was the thing that was paying my bills.
So you were still
So
going there
I
as the
was
time
still
she was okay.
correct. I'm
Okay.
still pastoring there and doing everything, but it was so taxing on my family.
Mm.
I actually told my family, I said, "You guys no longer need to go there." Now that's a whole nother conversation,
It's yeah.
because that would not be typical. Because yeah, if you're raised in church, you do hear the obey your authorities and all of the spiritual authority and how that works from the head down and all of
Right.
those in all of those areas. Well, I'm in the situation to where I don't feel like I can have a conversation without knowing that my butt's going out the door. And
Mhm.
so I was praying, "God, give me courage," because here's the other thing. I feel like even in transition, and this is kind of, it's one of those things you'll understand, but quitting a job or leaving a job, however you want to phrase it, resigning from a job,
Right.
it's not wisdom to do that if you don't have something that you're going to.
I have learned that the hardest way possible. Yes.
And
Yes, sir.
so in this situation, man, I had nothing to go to.
Yeah.
And however, I know that I'm not supposed to be in this spot anymore.
Yeah.
So praying, fasting God what to do. And literally he says, "Josh, you need to resign your position. Resign and get out."
And I would say that is like the one caveat, right, to all this, that you do make that decision. I would hope you've heard from like you may not right. That's that walk. It is that fine line, Josh, of walking by faith and not walking by stupidity.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, okay, if I know I've heard from him, I'm not seeing anything yet. I hope you have something on the other side of this instead of just, oh, I don't like it. I had an argument and people are leaving their jobs by faith.
Ye-
Yeah, context is a little different. I would say yes. Make sure you've heard, talk to somebody about it, wise counsel, all the things. Yes.
That's that boyfriend and girlfriend thing. God's told me to break up with
Oh,
you.
Bible college. All
Yes.
this, oh yeah, or God's told me to marry. You're the one, and all the. Oh yeah, oh yeah, 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 yeah.
And so, I mean, there was a particular day. I'll never forget the day as long as I live. I walked in and I said, look, I said, here's the situation. And I did not, here's the other thing of this. There's no reason to get belligerent and no reason to get ugly in situations. I feel
Right. Even in disagreement. Yes,
yes,
correct.
exactly. But I feel like I've heard this my whole life, and I do truly believe it. How you leave one place is the way you will enter into another
The
place.
next. Yeah.
And so I had this conversation, and they received it and said okay, and we discussed it, and we set a timeline for the end of the year. This was
Yeah.
September when we had this conversation, and we set a timeline for the end of the year. And so it did, that moment gave me a little bit of time to try to figure
Mhm.
out what was in the future.
Okay.
And so I'm still working. I'm still doing what God has called me to do, and that's another key for somebody out there. If you are wherever you're at and you're going through this, it is pivotal and it is so important to give 150% of who
Right,
you are.
because that's the temptation, isn't it?
100%.
To You're ticked off. You may have a reason or a right to be frustrated. Your family specifically you has been mistreated. Whatever the context was, internally you're saying, and I've been there. Screw it. I'm not going to do it. But like you said, at the end of the day, your principles, your character, despite other people's, I can't control what the world around me, people around me is saying.
Yeah.
I don't want to give all. I don't want to give 110,000%, Josh. Like that's the hard part.
Yeah, and that's when your character actually speaks of what
Yes.
it is. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I had determined in my life, at that time, I'm going to give everything to this until the day I leave here.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. I did it with my whole heart, and we got to November, and I got a phone call that morning. Actually, it was a text message. I got a text message to come in early on the Sunday at the beginning of November. I came in early to the church, and I was told that morning that that day was going to be my last service on staff, and
This was not
this
the
was not
planned. Okay, I just want to make sure context for everyone who's listening. This was not the end of the year thing. This was like something
this was
changed
this
in
was
their
eight
mind. Something happened.
this
Okay.
was 7 to 8 weeks early.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, and so I'm like, okay, that is fine. They just felt like it was the best to go ahead
Okay.
and cut ties at that point in time. But you have to realize where I'm coming from. I have an entire team that I have
Hmm.
poured my life into,
Right.
that now I'm not even going to get to tell people goodbye. So nobody knows this is my last service. That, thinking back to it, man, I've thought about this so many times. To tell somebody that this is your last Sunday and then know that this person is leading four of the worship songs that are being done on that Sunday, knowing
Right.
that this could get very interesting, you know.
Mm,
But did what I was supposed to do. Nobody knew a thing, and that's the way it should be. Nobody knew a
yeah.
thing going forward.
I
But
see that. Yeah.
to this day, Taylor, nobody has an idea of why Josh McCutchen is not there anymore,
Wow.
because it's never been discussed. And because so many things were hidden, and just okay, well, it was just, and this is the Christian answer that you hear a lot of times. Well, it was just their time, or it was, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
and so that was it. And at that point I didn't know what to do. So I'm no longer there, and trying to figure out what is going to happen at that point. And had a little bit of money, to where it'd get me through about 3 to 4 weeks, which that's not healthy, folks. That's a whole nother finance podcast. But I'm like, God, you're going to have to lead me and guide me, because at this
Yeah.
point, ministry is all I've known for this many years. What am I going to do?
Mm.
And the Lord opened up a position selling cars. And dude, selling furniture, bro, or selling vehicles was something I never ever expected. I sold furniture too, but I did anything I could to make ends meet. But I
Yeah.
I ended up selling cars for a season for about, goodness, 9 to 12 months. But here's what's
Oh,
crazy
okay.
is I began this job. I didn't want to do it. Man, I know what the thoughts are of people with car sales. Ask somebody if they want to go to a car dealership and buy a car. The answer is no, you don't want
Right.
to. And so I this was a salary position. This is the only reason I took the job, was because I knew how much I was going to be making, and I knew I could make ends meet for my family. And so I would take it, and I would do what I could to learn. Took the position in the middle of December. And if you know anything about car sales, most people don't, you have a quota of cars that you're supposed to sell per month.
Yep.
And the quota that was set for us was 12. I came in on December the 16th of this year. And I came in by the end of the month, December the 16th through December 31st, I had sold 13 cars.
Whew.
I told them coming in, I said, here's the thing you're going to get with me. I said,
Yeah.
I will not lie to people. I will not tell people things that they don't need to know, but I will build a rapport with them, and they will have a relationship when they get done talking. Because, I mean, let's be honest, that's what pastors do. We talk, and and that's just part of it.
Right.
The next month, I sold 20. The next month, I sold 22 cars. The next month, I sold 25 cars.
Mm.
And I begin to watch God do this thing to where my ministry shifted from inside of the church to
Yeah.
outside of the church. And to this day, man, I still have sales associates that I worked with that I still talk to,
Wow.
because because of because they knew, man, I had multiple times where I would pray with people inside the car. That they probably wouldn't want to know that, but I mean, where
Mhm.
I would build relationship with people driving, doing a test drive, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden, in the middle of the test drive, we'd be in conversation and tears start to roll down people's faces. And so this whole position turned
Wow.
into my ministry. And at that
Yeah.
point, when that began to happen, I thought to myself, God, this is what you had in plan in store for me all along. And what's crazy about that is that 9 to 12 months into it, the general manager of the entire organization wanted to shift me up to a crazy position where I'd have been making triple digits and everything. But then I got a phone call from Victory Family Church, and Christy Starling, who's is where I've been for the last 6 years,
Okay.
almost 7 years. And I got that phone call, and I knew it was time. It was time. I'd been, man, I had sang every song about, in the waiting and all of these things.
All of it. Right. Right.
Everything, praying about it.
Yes.
Through that time, God was working on me. There was things in my life that I needed work on. For one, financial stuff. I'd lived this life of keeping up with the Joneses and all of these things in my past that I needed to get under control. Well, I started going to
Yeah.
financial peace within my church. And these
Okay.
things
Yeah.
that God started to do in me, and he's like, yeah, see, here's why I needed to put a pause on you for a while. And here's what I needed to do inside of you before the next season in your life started.
Mm.
And I didn't understand it at the time, man. I would have never dreamed that I would have been selling cars, but it was a journey that God took me through, and it was life changing. It was all because I made a decision in a very, very tough environment that, God, I'm going to listen to you and I'm going to obey, even though it was
Mhm. Yeah. Man, oh man, no, you're right. I feel like I could write, and I honestly I think I'm going to one day write a book on transitions, what to do, what not to do. And I feel like I'm coming out of the what not to do's
Yep.
in transitions, and learning how to handle, how to navigate, to one, not feel like God's abandoned you. Because the first moment, a lot of times when crap hits the fan, whether of our own doing or of life's, people's. And guys, and just know this, whether you're a Christian or not here listening, us Bible believers, Jesus walking with him, we are not exempt from stuff. Matter of fact, I mean, Jesus out of his mouth, right? Ye shall have tribulation, right? Like, it's the unavoidable. And for too long, for too much of my life, Josh, I got to the point, the beginning of this year, January, I had this wake up call, and here we are. That is wild. It's December. Guys, I don't know how it happened. The past 2 or 3 years, even my kids, Josh, have said this. And they're young. And you usually don't feel like you say these type of things until you get older. Like, dad is like, did God, literally my oldest son, did God speed up the clock? Like, how are we in? Like, even he's noticing it, that time is just flying here. But I had this revelation, and many churches do this. They do ours here. Vivid Church, my good friend Alan and Amanda Kendrick here in South Carolina, did 21 days of prayer and fasting. A lot of churches do something similar to this. In the beginning of the year, they do a corporate gathering of fast. And Josh, I had this wake up call, and I'm looking in the mirror, and I'm physically seeing myself. I'm 38, and I'm going to be 39 next month, and I just have this wake up call in my life to the reality as I myself am praying and fasting. It's 6, I think like 6 in the morning, worship's playing on. And I see my life of 2 different paths that it could take. And just this revelation, Josh, of if things don't change, nothing's going to change. That there is this balance of waiting on God, believing him to do what he can do. But I remember the Lord telling me, everyone's right. God can do anything. He can do everything. Well, there's actually some things God can't do. And people, how dare you say that? No. And I remember the Lord telling me this. The Holy Spirit whispered to me and said, I can't make you get in my word. I can't make you go to the gym. I can give you music all day long. You've got to take the pen. You've got to write it down. There are things, yes, that God can't do, Josh, and it was this wake-up call for me, and I've been on a tear, on a path, and I think this is what God has had all along for me, and this is just the beginning, Josh, to speak to people who feel stuck, who feel like they've blown it, and they don't know how to get up, Josh. And for so many years, just going through the motions and doing my best to try to stay strong, right? A husband, a dad, 5 kids, but warring internally and wondering, when is my time going to come? God, you've had these promises, you've had these things for me, but just not knowing how to get up. And it was a thing for me, Josh, that all I knew what to do at that moment, I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, I don't want to become 40 and I don't want to look like this anymore. I don't want to think like this anymore. I've got to just I've got to shock my life up. And I'm going to the gym. I don't know what it is. I threw myself in there, and guys, it'd been a minute since I've been in the gym, and everybody knew it. Y'all know the new dude who's in the gym that can't remember how to lift any of the machines, and everybody knows you're the new guy, right? And it can be very intimidating.
Yes,
and
sir.
Guys, I grew up athletic, in shape, involved in sports, and how I'm coming in with, I don't drink beer, but looking like I've got a beer belly. I've got 3 chins, like looking like Taylor ate the old Taylor. Like, what's going on? But like, I don't know where to start, God, but I'm just going to act. And Josh, I feel like sometimes, guys, if you're listening, the way out is sometimes it's just through. Start with messy action. Josh, I didn't know, I knew I didn't know where to start. I didn't know how to shake my life up. But I knew I just needed to do something to shock myself. So I got into the gym and been going now ever since February, back and forth now. It's been 2.5 months since I've been able to actually lift. My back issues have rearisen. Now it's up here. It can really do damage on the mind because I was just on this upward trajectory of watching my body change. But Josh, more than that, the fight that I fought with my mind, I ran into some demons that were in the closet, literally at the gym. And I think that's what God had for me. So I want to talk about this, the connection between our bodies, the connection between our minds and our spirits, and how I think we would love to compartmentalize them, but you really can't. It's all connected. And at least I have found that the biggest release for me, yes, physically was there, but like I found Taylor again. When I was getting my health back, getting my mind back, that I was getting my fire back about life, my passion back, that yes, it was about me physically being healthy for my kids so I can be able to keep up with them and run with them and all those things. But the biggest thing for me, and while I'm still going, even though I can't lift, I got an MRI tomorrow. Y'all be praying for your boy to figure out what's going on up here. All my nerves it's just out of whack. But I still go to run just to keep this. because it took me so long, Josh, to get this back, because this is where I lost it. And this is where many people lose it before they ever lose it in their body, before they cheat on their spouse, before they just leave their job one day. Something broke, Josh, in here before we ever saw it externally. Walk us through that. I know that you were saying, I think that you were, is it a therapist or something, a physical therapist, or kind of
Man,
share us that experience that you've had with some yo-yos, some ups and downs with physical thing, the mental thing, because we talk about it a lot in this community, just the importance and how they're all connected.
wow, this is such a big one, man, because um I feel like I have dealt with this. This is moment of transparency, and guys, I'll be honest, this is hard because this is something I've battled my entire life. I've always been very similar to what you were just talking about, Taylor. I've always been athletic. I've always played everything, done everything, but I've always been a bigger person.
You
Now,
guys, this guy right here, very competitive. I'm trying to tell y'all. He's a legend, you guys. Basketball, ping pong, foot. I'm trying to let y'all know. He's known worldwide.
it's always been my world. And even through being a larger person, but I've always had this mental battle even from the time, and I mean I've never known what it is, to be honest,
Hmm.
because I've went on this roller coaster ride my entire life of weight. That's what it is. I have, and probably call it what it is. I mean, a food addiction to
Mm.
where I struggle in that area, and I know that. However, really until just the past year, I have kind of said, okay, Josh, you need help with this. Because let me go back to 2020.
Yeah.
So February, man, I've never said some of this stuff, but I think it will help somebody. February of 2020, I found myself on the scale, and I found myself looking almost at the number 400 on the scale. And I said, that can't be. And I had to make a change. February of 2020, I walked myself into a place called Orange Theory Fitness. And
Mm.
you can research that. It's a really great
Got
way
some
of
here. Yep.
just shaking everything up physically. So I started February, and many of you know, March the 13th of 2020. What happened? Our entire
Mm.
world shut down.
Yes.
I was 1 month into where I was 5 times a week at the gym, getting my mind right, exactly what you were talking about.
Yes.
Everything shuts down. The gym shut down. The churches shut down. Everything. And I will never forget it, man, because our church did, my Pastor Adam Starling, talks about this often. In that moment of time, we had to make a determination as a church to what we say pivot, because
Okay.
everything was different. And we began to do some different things within our church where we went basically virtual with everything. And we
Hmm.
started almost like a TV show for every week. Well, I'm frustrated. I can't do my workouts anymore. I can't do this, can't do that. And on Mondays, on our virtual TV stuff that we started doing, we had a man by the name of Benny Wiley. Many of you know him. He's the
Hmm.
University of Southern USC. And but at the time he was at OU, and he was doing for our church Monday morning fitness stuff, which was allowing me to stay on track mentally with what I was doing. He would give us stuff
Okay.
where we could do
Yes.
things. So I was still working through it, but I wasn't getting the results that I wanted to. And move forward. A year went by. I started to see the changes. I started to see the physical changes, the mental changes, the clarity. 4 years on at Orange Theory, and it has shaped and changed everything. Now I'm gonna. This is why I'm saying this, because I'm bringing it into this year.
Hmm.
Um, Around March, April, we had a lot of things happen on our plate, and I think this is where things for me started to shake a little bit. We ended up moving homes. We ended up, and I could go down the list of things that began to happen, but I saw myself start to slip in the food, start to slip in. And here's the biggest one that I have learned: the routine. My
Mm.
routine
Yeah.
was completely shaken. And I learned over the past 4 years that routine is so key in what you're doing. I would wake up at 5:30 every morning. I was at Orange Theory at 6:15. I would work out 6:15 to 7:15. I would automatically feel so much better. I would walk into my day at the church at 8:30 to 9 o'clock and then do my day. And that was a part of who I was. When that routine was shaken and started to crumble, everything else started to waver along with it.
Yeah.
And my weight started to fluctuate, and I started to see myself slip in certain food areas and all of these things. And that was where I made another hard decision this year, because again, where I come from and kind of the background of where I come from, therapists and all of those kind of things, therapy was, oh well, you're not living in faith with God and all of these kind of things. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
my pastor, and I cannot say enough how thankful I am for my church and Victory Family Church with my pastors. Everything they do, everything to try to help us as staff, and our church actually provides any kind of therapy that you want
Mm.
as a staff member. And so I found myself trying to figure out, okay, I need to go see somebody and talk to somebody, because I see everything that's happening. I know everything that's happening, but what's going on here that's not translating? And so I started this a few months ago, and I truly feel like my routine is getting back on track. I'm back to my morning workouts. I'm back doing what I need to do. But I think that's the biggest thing I've learned is that, number one, I have to talk to somebody. I have to, and one of these things, I mean, you were saying it a while ago, all of these things work together. The
Mhm.
working out, the food, the spiritual, everything works together as a whole. And I don't know if I fully realized that until the last couple of years, but when my other stuff is right with my routine and everything,
Right.
everything seems
Yes.
to
Yeah.
be in the correct path.
Mhm.
And then when it's not, man, I the difference that I can tell as a whole, it's night and day, man. Night and day.
Yeah, that's I think it's a shame, but it's a reality of the thoughts toward therapy or getting any sort of help in that in that instance outside of the Bible
Yeah.
or in the Christian faith, that like it's this is not a shot at the word of God. But if I am needing help in certain areas, I think that God has given us doctors. And I don't believe that there is this fight against science, against God, or this against that. Like, no, it's I think when I myself, Josh, has found this out within the past couple of years, the holistic, this approach that, as much as I would want to separate those things and for me myself sound real spiritual, but know that I'm sucking swamp water in my financial life, in my physical life, in my mental health, but I'm going to church every day, I'm maybe in the word or whatever, that the vitality of life and us being salt and light, I think, can be better if it's reflected in every area of our lives. And again, this is not a chase for perfection, but what this is, and I want to applaud you on, Josh, is just one, your vulnerability and your authenticity and your honesty in these areas. Because this is what, guys, I talk about. This is what helps so many people is I'm not saying I've arrived at X point, but it's very rare, Josh, to find people who have that self-awareness that can say, hey, I know where I struggle and I'm admitting it. I'm being open and I'm being honest about it, whatever it is in our life. We've talked about multiple things at times in our life, struggling financially or
Yep.
whatever it is, relationally, ups and downs. The winds and waves will come in life. And it is so good. And I think it takes courage to have humility in those moments to say, okay, I'm recognizing this, but now again, what am I going to do about it? And I think that's a theme that we've been talking about kind of through whether it's transitions in life or whether it's something of my own making or somebody else's making. How am I going to respond?
Yes, sir.
I really do. And it makes it easier to respond in a healthy way when you have healthy community. You're talking about, you've got healthy leaders that are around you, that are inspiring you, that are encouraging you. Or sometimes we need a little bit of the slight whip on our backs to say, hey, come on, buddy, keep it going, keep pressing, keep going through that. That's, I talk about it all the time on this space, you guys. There is consistency when you have healthy community. Just having you
Yeah.
said those patterns, having those things in our life, those regiments, my schedule, whatever that is. How can we have those patterns? How can we keep those for people out there that are like very organized? I'm just gonna be honest, I'm not one of those people. And I'm fully self-aware about it, right? I can tend to be a hippie too much and like to flow, and I like change and I can go with it. But I'm finding that different seasons demand different structures. I am in a season where that structure of going loosey goosey, that ain't working for me anymore. I need to be more. This happens at this time. This happens at this time. This happens at this time. All 5 of our kids, all of them, we're now homeschooled. Me and my wife now both work from home. So just imagine that. Take that context. I'm a teacher. We're teachers. We're fathers. We're husband. We're wife. We're trying to do all this stuff that we can't be as loosey goosey as we would like. Life doesn't always let us keep our schedules just, Josh, just
Yeah.
streamlined. How can we create our schedules, or talk about times maybe where you've had to, in this instant, adjust your schedule? Well, I think we need to be rigid in areas, but I also think being fluid, having some fluidity
Yeah.
to where we're able to bend and break, because life is going to happen. Like you said, COVID, nobody saw that coming. Everything, I think, since then has even changed. The way bosses, the way jobs, the way people are working from home. In worship ministry, a lot of people aren't meeting anymore. They're doing online rehearsals. So, and I think we've talked about this before. Things have changed. I think can be some good things about being fluid and changing up our patterns. In what ways have you had to do that, maybe since COVID or recently, specifically maybe in your worship world or in your world with your family?
Man, I'll say, I'll get to that on the worship side here in just
Yeah.
1 second. But the biggest help for me personally is, and I would say this to anybody, the greatest asset that you have is going to be your spouse. I have my wife, so communication's what is very key, because I have 4 kids. My wife works at the University of Oklahoma, a full-time job. I work at the church full-time. I help my cousin Leah with her estate sale business. My oldest is at OU for aerospace engineering. I have a second
Wow.
grader. All of these things. My youngest daughter's in basketball. My other son is in soccer. My other daughter is in musical theater and has all of these other things. So every one of us have all of these things, but if you do not communicate schedules and
Hmm.
a lot of it, I'm not great at this, but I have learned to do this the older I get, is putting it down on paper, man, and that's what will allow you to get into a healthy rhythm. Like, for instance, so my wife, our schedule right now, she wakes up, and I don't know how she does this, and thank the Lord she does it. She wakes up between 4:15 and 4:30 every morning, and
Ooh.
that's not an exaggeration. And she's at the gym by 5. I'm walking out the door at 5:30 to 5:45 to be at the gym at 6:15. So she's coming back to the house to be able to get the kids off to school. That time
Gotcha.
I'm coming home, I'm getting all my stuff together. She heads for work, and then I head for work. And then we communicate what the day after looks like. Like today, I have youth worship tonight, and I won't be home till 9 to 10 o'clock at night. So she takes care of all of the other things. Just communicating and being able to be on the same page is what's going to be the biggest help as a whole for rhythms and routines. On the worship side, man, I've seen that you nailed it to a T, because I've seen it adjust so much right before COVID. I mean, you named it.
Hmm.
We had rehearsals every Thursday night at 6 o'clock. And then moving out of that, now this is a testament to our team, because you'd mentioned doing rehearsals online. We are very blessed at Victory Family Church, man, because we do everything through Planning Center and have everything
Hmm.
all set for our teams. But our teams are required, and they know that when they come in on Sunday morning, that they have to have their music set to go and vocals have their stuff set to go. And so, because when we came through COVID, we made that pivot during that time
So
frame.
that's when okay.
That's when that
Yeah.
shift happened. And so, where we would typically brush up on things on the Thursday, Now they brush up on things on their own at their house and then come prepared Sunday morning to rock and roll. And so that did shift some things. Now, I will say this, and we've had a lot of discussions about this. I think that in and of itself knocked out a personal level for a lot of churches. And I know we've dealt with it to a point to where, when you have a team in a rehearsal for an hour and a half, you're building relationship during that time. Not having that space every single week has made
Mm-hmm.
adjustments. And so you have to be even more intentional about your teams and everything that you do because you're not getting that segment of time every week. And so it does. I mean, there's a lot of, I believe, growing pains and things that you have to learn in the process of that. I believe that there's been some very positive things to pivoting on those things, but I think there's also some things that can definitely be worked on to help the process move forward.
It's such a good word, Josh, because life is going to demand change even when we don't want change. And how we change with the change, again, is just so huge that we can readapt, we can pivot and still get the outcomes that we're wanting. Just in prayer and talking with other people, I have found, talking with my pastor and talking with friends, that I struggle with wanting the context of my life right, and me thinking that the only way that I can get the content of my life is if the context fits. This has got to be here, and if this is here, and if this lines up with this, and this lines up with that, then that's the only way. And it's been a journey. Again, I'm still on this, but the Holy Spirit just kind of, I feel, telling me, saying, Taylor, you can have it all without having it all. Meaning you can still have all the things that you're wanting, all these goals, without the context, without life looking the way that you want it to right now. An
Yeah.
easy way to put that, again, is right now I'm going to be finding out if I'm going to have surgery on my back or do whatever. I've had to pivot my workouts. I've had to go harder on my diet until I can lift, because you
Sure.
can kind of eat a little bit more. If you're pressing a lot of weight, you can do whatever. And I struggle with that also. Dude, man, I love me some pasta. I love me some pizza. I love me some bread. I've drank more soda than any human on earth should literally probably ever drink in his entire life. So I'm not being able to have any of that. This energy drink that I'm drinking, and no, it's not, I'm not chugging a beer up here on the YouTube. It's like the cleanest one I've had to find online, and I'm about to have to be giving rid of that. So it's been hard. I can still have the outcomes that I'm wanting, but it is true. I think sometimes we have to pivot. We have to adjust. We have to do things that we may not like. I would prefer pumping the iron on the bench press, but I'm having to run more. I hate running. But if it still gets me the outcome, you see what I'm saying? Like, at the end of the day, I'm still keeping the mind. I'm still losing some weight. I don't like running. It's not my thing. For others, it may be their thing. I'm having to make it my thing. So it's just us getting out of our own way, I guess I would say. And at the end of the day, if we're still getting the outcomes that we desire, we don't always have to, as McDonald says, have it our way.
Yes.
One of the things I do want to talk about before we get to Josh, I mean, obviously you guys, I've been on many worship teams with Josh before. It all started with him way back in the day, youth choir. I remember singing so many of the Kirk Franklin songs, Israel Houghton song, New Breed. Worship has obviously changed so much within the past kind of 20 something years, and specifically into Christian radio, but also worship within the church. What are some things, Josh, that you're seeing that you feel church wide, that you what are some things you like about things we have changed when it comes to worship and where you feel it's going? And what are some things you feel that we are maybe missing, or things that you miss specifically in the context of worship? Because the styles of songs, the lyrics, even chord structures, this, all of these things I think really do matter and play a part in how we worship and how long we worship. It's changed the structure of our services.
Yeah.
What are some things you like? And what are some things, if you were to be deeply honest and some truth serum were to come in, you'd be like, you know what? I wish we could go back to that. Because there's a lot of things that I feel we have cheapened in worship. We're cheapening the experience to be more efficient in our churches. And I think, in essence of doing that, are we cutting short a true God encounter for people? Or have you found that we're able to be efficient. Churches have multiple services. I get it. But how do we keep the depth without the in and out? We got to start at this time. We got to end at this time. All right, guys, this and that, because guys, I come from a structure and a background to where, if this is just me, if I could throw away the click, if I could throw away all the stuff and I didn't have a timeline, dude, that's more me. But I also understand the other side. Where do you find yourself in that? In leading worship and leading worship teams for multiple different churches? What do you miss about what we used to have? Or do you like it all and you just think the sky's the limit? You want to keep on skyrocketing towards that?
Oh, this is a loaded question, man.
Yeah.
For those that don't know me, I come from I
Yeah.
was
Talk about that.
I was raised in a holiness church,
Hmm.
which for those that don't understand, I mean there was a lot of standards where you grew up with, and which worship wise was basically turn to page number 232 and we're going to sing I Would Not Be Denied. You can look at the Pentecostal holiness
Yeah.
hymn, and
Is
that's
it 232?
number page 98 is He Set Me. You can look
No
that.
way. Guys, this is
And
wild.
so I was raised on the hymns, and to be
Hmm.
very honest, I'm so thankful,
Yeah.
because I felt like
Me too.
my background and understanding worship was based off of a true experience in my heart. And so, saying that, I come from a Pentecostal background where I can name multiple times where I would get into a worship service and I would sing for 3 to 4 hours straight. And that's
Phew.
I'm not
Some
exaggerating.
of y'all don't know nothing about that. Y'all love your 45-minute services. Y'all in and out. Y'all don't know this.
Yeah, I have a lot of people
Uh,
talk to me about, we have 4 services here where I'm at our campus.
yeah.
Our other campus has 6 services, and so there's every once in a while I will have to sing the entire set. And so an entire
Yeah.
day for me consists of singing a song, 24 songs plus rehearsal. And they're like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "Guys, you have no idea where I came from and
I
what we
was.
grew up on." But,
Uh,
and then to where I would say today, we are definitely more structured. Here's what's super incredible, and I feel like our pastors as a whole in their leadership are constantly trying to follow the leading of the Holy Spirit in this, because um, I do feel like there is a certain balance
mhm.
that you can have within in worship to allow the moving of the Holy Spirit within your services, but not also quench that. Because I have been in certain ones that I'm like, man, there was nothing to this. You didn't even give an opportunity to let God speak and download
Yeah.
anything in this worship experience. And so we've been on this journey as a church, and even so in the last 3 months where we've changed our format a little bit and tweaked our format to allow more time. You asked me the question, what do you miss? I do miss lingering
Yeah.
in an atmosphere that just where you can feel the tangible presence of God. And thankfully our church, we also do worship nights where specifically everything's thrown out the window and there is a complete night of where we just worship. The entire night is worship driven, and yes, we are very current with what today's worship world would be considered with Ableton and
Yeah.
what all we use. But there's those moments where I will give this signal and they will go to a backup click, and hey, we are off grid and we are following what I
Gotcha.
feel like the Holy Spirit's downloading into me at that time. And so we do have those moments. But our church, and you can imagine our church as a whole, talking about every campus, what Victory Family Church is, we're around 10,000 people. And
Mm.
so there has to be some kind of structure, because without structure it's going to be complete chaos
You're chaos. Yeah.
with that many people. However, my pastors also realize the importance of the Holy Spirit within our services. And so we have shifted everything to where it allows more time within our worship sets. And then at the very end, when the sermon is concluded, this has just happened within the last 3 months. When the sermon is concluded, we go into what's called a response time. And when he finishes, the worship team literally You have your keys, you have your guitar players. It is just laying down a foundation, nobody's singing nothing, and we go until we feel a release to go into the last worship song, and then we have
Mm,
whatever time that we want to conclude the worship experience at the end of the service, and then we release the entire congregation. So there's
okay.
nothing after the worship team. When we're done and we feel that release, then we dismiss everybody.
Yeah.
I've watched that happen with our team, but there is a balance there that you can get into. But I think the lingering is what I miss the most. But I very much appreciate structure. I think there is so much worship side of things that have no structure that can really affect even a non-Christian person. They walk in and they're like, they have no idea what's going on. And the conviction of the Holy Spirit is what draws people in your worship experiences. So you need that opportunity to be able to do that. But I think there is a balance there that you have to know that you're walking in step with your leadership and the authority.
Yeah.
I think that is the key, because us as worship pastors are going to have our own feeling on so many different things, but you were placed where you are at for a specific reason, and which there is a chain of authority. And if you do not feel like there needs to be some changes, then have discussions and maybe that's not the place for you. So I think there are conversations that probably need to be had, but on a stage and on a platform is not your place to prove a point, if that makes sense.
Yes, right, right, and yes, and because it will be really obviously awkward, and I think I've been around in those moments, and everybody can feel it and see it, saying, "What's going on?" There's this awkward battle going on in the
Yes,
air
sir.
for primacy of, and you've probably seen and felt that too. But I think it goes back to what we were talking about. Well, it's so good communication. Once again, in this context, communication just within itself, it is so huge, and having the trust and building a relationship in those areas to where you have, yes, you have your authority that you're submitting to, but man, I think it can be really good when you also have a friendship there, that this person isn't just my boss, they trust me, I
Yes.
trust them. So if an instance, if you are feeling the leading of the Holy Spirit and things go 2 3 minutes, whatever it is, past X cutoff time, whatever, it's nice to know and good to feel that you can have those moments, but you're not just taking that every single time. And now it's like, okay, you're not following the Holy Spirit. You're just wanting to, kind of whatever. And yeah,
And
I think,
I'll say this too, because this is just a pet peeve of mine. Man, as worship pastors, you're not put in place to be the lead pastor. You are put there, and that your place of position is to lead the people into worship, not to preach your own mini sermon. And I've seen that so many times, and it irks me. No, it is not your platform to try to gain your position as a lead pastor. And if that's what you're doing it the wrong way.
yeah, if that's the angle, you may need to find another place, and maybe ministry isn't you, for at least for now. You got you got some character issues. There's some things that are happening. But no, you can't. I think it's a very passive aggressive way to deal with something when it's just what you said. I think if it's gotten to that point, if you're a worship pastor out there and you're dealing with these things, I think you just need to have a conversation with your lead pastor. You need to talk. You need to open up. You need to be vulnerable and say, "Hey, I would like it if we could have worship segments go a little bit longer," or whatever the thing is. Communication can fix. Wow, Josh, seriously,
And if you're
so much.
if you're scared to have that conversation, go back to the first segment of this podcast.
Rewind. Yeah, yeah. There's a clip that you may want to listen. Context, you're right, matters in that. It depends where you're at. You may not be able to have that conversation whatsoever. Yeah,
Yeah.
or yeah, it may be a little bit different for you. Man, that is so true. But Josh, I think I agree with you on so many points, and just do want to talk about just on that I do miss. I believe if there's anything that I long for, I'm an old soul. So I'm right with you on that. I wasn't really raised in church. Really, by the time I got into church, I mean, shortly after you were our worship pastor there in Muskogee, and the hymnals, the songs, just the theology, the wording, what that really rooted within me, right? About the blood, the cross, stuff that I don't maybe think we hear or sing enough about these days. There are some songs, some things I think we're kind of making a turn and a shift now. But I do miss, it wasn't some magical thing that necessarily fixed everything. And some people, maybe abused it in a sense, but I do miss those actual altar lingering period times where there is a time that I always knew, no matter what, especially as a young kid who just really needed a place to be heard, to be felt, to be understood, that they weren't going to go in and go out. And I think as long as churches are providing some form of that connection, and I think, again, I don't want to make some holy shrine thing out of it or turn it into the altar into an actual idol and say the only place that you can meet God is at a wooden altar in a church. No. As you've said, you were doing ministry, Josh, with people as a car salesman, and people are finding God in a test drive, probably not knowing that's what they came there for, but God is like, I'm going to show up anywhere. And I think as long as that's the aim, as long as that's the main, right, the main goal, the main pursuit is connecting with God and connecting others to him, no matter what that looks like. I think if that's our goal, if that's our aim, our worship is going to have depth. It's going to have clarity. It's going to communicate the right message. That at the end of the day, church, even within itself, is not the answer. Jesus is. He just happens to use us broken, imperfected people. And I'm so glad he does. Josh, I'm very thankful this morning and today for grace, and looking back over the years. Obviously, when I talk to you, man, so many memories flood my mind, and we could take up 7,000 podcasts and have a million conversations about, guys, so many things. But yeah, I am, man. I'm at a hunger kind of for that in my life, and just want to thank you at the end of this, Josh, just for who you are, for who you were to me when I was young. You inspired me in so many ways. One, in music, in worship, what it was like to navigate that space and how to lead worship, but also what it was like to live a life of that. That the same person that I saw on the stage was the connection in the same person that I saw off of that. And that's very rare. And again, you talk about honoring people, man. I just want to honor you in that so much. I've carried those moments. I carry certain moments with me that I go back to. And yeah, man, fine arts and worship, youth hangouts and having fun, all those memories I still have in my head. One memory I wish I could take away was when USC destroyed us. I think that was back in 2004. And I remember I was at your house, and I think I vowed to never again watch a football game.
Actually, it was after the LSU debacle that you vowed to never watch another game.
That's what it.
We have seen 2 national championships lost at my house.
What? Yeah. I don't know. But at least I guess we were getting to them. Are we ever going to get to? We're Oklahoma Sooner fans, guys. I don't know if we're ever going to get to another one again. We're in the SEC now, in this world of NIL, and everything is different. But let's see. Hopefully, if this coming year, let's just have a healthy team. Let's start with that. Let's not have 6 starting wide receivers gone. Let's have an O-line that can be the same for the most part, instead of 8, 9, 10 different shifts. I mean, who can win with that, with the new OC? Blah, 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 blah. All the things, guys. Yeah, it's a wild thing.
Yes, sir.
Well, Josh, there's so many more things, man, I'd love to talk to you about, but it's going to have to be on a part 2, sir. I love you so much. Honor you, man. Thank you so much for jumping on the pod with me. And again, being vulnerable, being honest, sharing your brokenness, sharing your struggles, sharing your victories. Give the people one last just little clip of where they can find you, how they can connect with you online, or watch some of the online services that you guys do, so they can know who this man Josh is.
Absolutely, man. First of all, it's an honor to be able to do this with you today. Been incredible to watch you and Mal's journey, and just see what God's doing through you guys. Man, you can see Victory Family Church here in Norman, Oklahoma, with pastors Adam and Christy Starling. They started this church about 10, 11 years ago. And actually right at 11 years ago, I'm currently the associate pastor and worship pastor at the Newcastle campus. We run around 800 to 900 people here at our campus. And started at the Norman campus, and we have what's called VFC Worship, and we actually just did a live album recording about 2 to 3 months ago.
Yes.
So 10 original songs that we wrote in-house, and did that recording 3 months ago, and it will be coming out at the beginning of 2025. So be looking for that. VFC Worship. Super pumped about that. But you can live stream all the experiences and stuff like that. But man, you can also reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm an open book, and there's a lot I haven't talked about today. But if anybody wants to talk, man, I'm an open.
I love it. Y'all heard the man. VFC Worship 2025. Going to be very, very exciting. Looking forward to that. Always love new music, especially from somebody that I know, that I respect, and that I admire, and that I honor, sir. Again, Joshua McCutchen. You guys give a round of applause for him. Hey, there's gonna have to be a part two. We'll see whether it's at the end of the year or next year or something going on. But you guys, there's a lot of conversations again that we know that we didn't get to. We have a lot of history and stuff. So, sir, I bless you, man. Praying for you, honestly, praying for your family, everything that you got that God is doing within your church, within your hands. I just pray that God blesses it just extremely, man, and takes it to places you never saw, man. I love it. All righty, guys. Thank you guys for coming on the podcast. Episode 3 is in the books. I'll catch you on the other side. Peace.